Welcome to That Interview, a podcast with me, Ash Taylor, and Helen Sanders. This podcast is aimed at young people, 16 to 18. You could be older, you could be younger, who are getting ready for that wonderful world of work, and specifically that first interview experience. How are you, Helen?
I am stumped. No, I'm really good.
Gotcha.
I'm really good. A day that I talk to you is a good day.
It's our favourite Friday, isn't it? I love doing these. It's really good. Smashing them out. That's great. Yeah. So we're into series 2, and we've had some quite interesting guests already, haven't we?
And what is interesting is that some of our guests, we record these with one other person. So that's our guest. Yeah. And so they don't get the privilege of hearing what the previous guest said, but there's a theme. It just threads through. So let's see if today's guest picks up on the theme just from our vibes. We'll see.
Well, we'll see if that magic happens. And we're joined by, I can never get that right. It is, I'm going with by. Joined by?
Yes. Joined by, joined with, joined by.
Joined by. Steve Groves. How are you, Steve?
Good morning. Thanks very much for having me. I'm doing very well, thanks.
Excellent. So just for our audience, a little bit of context. Do you want to just tell people what's the change that Steve makes in the world? What is it that you do, so people know? We have some context.
I assume you're asking me what I do for a living. I make videos. I run a small corporate video production company. So we make all types of videos specifically for businesses to help them sell their products and services more effectively.
Fantastic.
Cool. Amazing. That's right. And we could do a long chat about how you started, and I suspect you and Helen may know some of the same people and all that sort of stuff, but we won't go there today. We're gonna kick off. So when you've recruited, Steve, obviously you've had young people come in, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So what are you looking for in a young person joining your organization?
So we quite often have young people coming to us for work experience or for to actually get some experience in our industry immediately after leaving college or university or whatever it is they happen to be doing. The most important things that we tend to look for are honesty, reliability, and a passion for the industry that we're working in. I can't stress that enough. They must have a genuine interest in video. It doesn't specifically have to be in corporate video, but they have to at least have an interest in the process of how film, television, video is made. Because that's something that we can't teach them. Like skills, how to actually do a thing, we can teach that. But the ability to fit into the team and the sort of the passion for what it is that we do, that's something that has to come from them. So really, it's about their personality and their work ethic. Those are the things that we're looking at more than anything else.
Okay. And so are you hiring them to become fully fledged videographers and editors? What types of opportunities would they have with you? Because then that leads on to me thinking, well, how do you hire that person? What are you looking for in a CV and an interview?
So it really depends on what specifically we're looking for at the time. But we're looking for people who could potentially become editors, or they might become camera operators, or people who can kind of help with the sort of the marketing aspects of what we do as well. So we don't just make videos. We also help our clients with what to do with the video after you've made it. So having an interest in social media and how that works is also really beneficial. So those are the kinds of things that we tend to look for.
Yep. So if I'm applying to you, I've just finished my A-levels, I'm applying to come and join you as in any of those roles, I'm sending you a CV. What are you looking for there?
So in the CV, what we're looking for are what your interests are outside of what you might have done for college or university. Yes. because then that's the passion that we're looking for. Is what do you do in your free time? What do you enjoy? Because there's no point in joining a creative industry if you don't enjoy being creative in your free time. So
it's kind of obvious, that one, but yeah,
you would have thought so. Yeah. Some previous experience doing stuff yourself or sort of coursework and everything is nice, but it's not necessary. Really, the most important thing is that passion for video, for film, for television, for the process of how one records footage and turns it into a piece of media for other people to enjoy.
Love it. Okay. And so really the CV, if I haven't done brilliantly academically, but I can send you links to my YouTube channel, for example, that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, exactly. Because that shows that you have that interest there, outside of whatever other academic stuff you might have done. And that's something that we can look at and see, okay, yeah, this person genuinely loves making videos about whatever topic might be.
It's not really relevant.
It's not really relevant. It's about the actual production process that we're looking for. And I get it. It can be hard, particularly for somebody who's literally just left college and they might be going to their very first interview, because it can feel a little bit like everything in your education is leading up to this one moment.
Yes.
And in the interview itself, what I really want, what I'm really looking for is somebody who can relax, and I know that's hard, but who can relax and is willing to show me their personality and who they really are, and having some confidence in their ability to share that. Because then, we can make an informed judgment on whether they're going to fit in with the rest of the team or not.
Yeah.
So is there an element there of, I'm reading between the lines perhaps, and I don't know whether you've actually thought about this or not, but if you're hoping to see people relax and share themselves with you a little bit, their interests and their passion, is there an element of asking them to be a little bit vulnerable?
Possibly. I mean, normally if I'm interviewing somebody, particularly young people, I'll open with some questions that are less about sort of what they're kind of hoping to do with themselves ultimately, and more about what do you like doing? What are your interests? What kind of movies do you like? What TV do you watch? Are there any YouTubers that you particularly enjoy? What are your hobbies? That sort of thing. Yeah. And those sorts of questions are really good, I find, because they're questions that anybody can easily answer, because everybody knows what they like.
Yes.
And it also it helps them to relax a little bit, because they're not having to think too hard. But it also tells me a little bit about who they are and what makes them tick. And that's kind of what I'm interested in.
Yeah, and also it's not a typical Q&A, because if you were saying, what are your strengths? Well, then they'll have gone to Google beforehand as part of their prep. What do I need to say for my strengths? Oh, and then what are your weaknesses? Well, that's another typical interview question, whereas you're asking them about their subject, which is themselves.
Exactly, yeah. And again, that ties into the honesty and the willingness to be themselves, because
yes.
I don't want them to tell me what they think I want to hear.
Yeah.
I want them to tell me the truth about themselves as a person, because that's the only way I can determine as to whether they'll be a good fit for the team or not.
Yeah. And I think that's where I was getting with the vulnerability piece. It's very difficult in an environment like that to be honest and to stay relaxed and to share stuff about yourself without kind of exposing yourself a little bit, and that being confident enough to be honest and to be that little bit vulnerable, I think is really important, because we all kind of walk around with this sort of shield that projects an image of what we think people expect of us. And actually allowing yourself to drop that shield a little bit and just be, I use your word, showing some integrity, being honest. That can be quite a difficult thing to do, because especially in the school environment or the college environment, you're constantly playing this game of, well, the teachers have these expectations of me. I've got to wear a uniform, maybe. My mates all think I'm this person because this is what I told them 3 years ago. And you kind of, everybody lives a little bit of a lie all the time. And actually it's about unpicking those layers so you get to the person underneath the lie.
Yeah.
And we don't do it deliberately. It's just, we build up these layers, don't we?
Yes.
Of comfort, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue that it would, because I mean, it's like you say, we all have these, we all put these barriers in front of ourselves, and we put an image out there of how we want others to see us, and you know, to kind of, you know, we all want to look like we're cool or whatever, but I think it shows a strength of character to let that barrier drop a little bit.
Exactly.
And to really show somebody else who you really are, what you enjoy. I think that's if somebody can do that, then that's you know, that's really definitely something to help. It's a very brave thing to do. And you know, people, if somebody can do that, then they will immediately have my respect.
Yeah, and it's as simple as something like when you get a question, and if you don't know the answer, to just say, "I'm really sorry, I don't know," rather than making something up.
Yes, rather than making something up or sort of going, well, I think it might be this. Just be honest and say, "I don't know, but I'd love to find out."
Yeah,
because that's vulnerable. Yeah. I think that there's a lot to be said for that. That's interesting. So, Steve, what's your favorite interview question?
So this is a question that somebody asked me when I went for one of my first interviews. It was, if I stopped one of your friends on the street and asked them how to describe you, what would they say?
Oh, I love it.
And I really,
brilliant question.
Is there a bus coming?
Yeah, I really like that question because it kind of pulls the rug out from under people a little bit in a playful way and gets them to think about themselves in an objective manner. And I think that's a good question. I really like that one.
Yeah, it's really nicely framed. Yeah, I really like it.
I love that. And what's been your favorite answer that you've had to that?
So my favorite answer for that was my friends would describe me as a crazy cat lady with too many piercings.
Showing vulnerability.
I love it.
That was a really good answer, I think. Spoiler alert: she's still working for us. She's been with us for the last 3-4 years now.
Well, then I know who she is. Then
there you go.
so showed a bit of a funny side to herself. Told you she's being honest, I assume. You know, and was able to be herself, which actually is also credit to you for framing the question in that way. Because what you're actually asking is, just tell me who you are.
Exactly.
Let's beneath the surface a little bit. Just tell me who you are. Who am I seeing here? Let's take the interview shield away. Who are you? Crazy cat lady with, was it too many piercings?
Too many piercings, yeah.
Okay, cool. I wonder how she'd answer that now. Fantastic.
That's fun. I'm never going to be able to receive an email from her again. In my head, I'm after like, "Hey, crazy cat lady."
And I'm going to swipe and deploy that question if that's all right with you. I'm going to use that.
You're very welcome. You can use that in your repertoire.
Yeah.
I like that one. That's really good.
Really good.
So, Steve, one more question. I mean, you've clearly spent a lot of time interviewing young people and bringing them into the organisation, and I've met a few of them, etc., etc. So, what would be your, if you could give somebody going out to interview, because we're coming into interview season now. My child is last exam is in 2 weeks, A levels, and then it's like, oh, what are we going to do? So I have no idea what they're going to do other than sleep, I suspect, given how hard life has been for the last 6 months or whatever, apparently. So, but what would be that one piece of advice you would give someone going into their very first interview? I mean, yes, people have had interviews for Saturday jobs and all that sort of stuff, but this is their first proper, call it 9 to 5, whatever it is. We all know that's actually 8 till 8. But what one piece of advice would you ask them to take with them?
So the biggest piece of advice that I could give, and this is going to sound really trite, but it really is just try and relax. Try and remember that this isn't just about the company working out whether they want you. It's also an opportunity for you to work out if the company is one that you want to work with.
Yeah.
So you are evaluating the company as much as they are evaluating you. And it can be quite tricky for interviewers as well. It doesn't seem like it when you're on the outside, but interviewing people is actually quite hard, because you've got to kind of ask the questions that are going to really get to the core of who that person is. And there's quite often there can be quite a lot of pressure to interview the right person. And not everybody likes being the interviewer as well. So the other person might also be nervous. But as I say, really try and think of it from that perspective. It's not just it's not just about the company evaluating you. It's also your opportunity to evaluate whether the company is a good company to work for, and B, whether you can see yourself fitting in with the other people who work there.
I think that's really, really interesting, because I'm very privileged to, careful how I say this, but overhear my wife Kay interviewing, and she's interviewing two types of people at the moment, and they're full on. And one is that they're doing lots of recruitment interviews. So the last 2 days, I think she's done 5, and she's got another couple next week. So it's been pretty relentless. So Helen, you'll know. But it's been what's been really fascinating is listening to those interviews, mostly one-sided. Sometimes it bleeds through, but I've got headphones on because I'm supposed to be pretending that I can't hear anything. I can't hear anything. But what's been fascinating is the conversation she has with her interviewer colleague afterwards, because everything's criteria based. And then, well, I'm giving this person a 3, because it's always out of 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm giving this person 3 because they answered, well, actually, I thought it was a 2, or why? And it's fascinating. So there's just as much pressure on the interviewer, because they sometimes have to meet standards, or maybe they're slightly inexperienced or younger as a company. They don't have that. She works for a government quango, so they've got quite rigid rules that they have to follow. But then the other side of it is that she's currently at the moment in the house doing a subject of investigation interview. So she's interviewing a partner from one of the big 4, and the difference in her interviewing skills is remarkable. From being quite nice and being to right, and you wrote this, and what happened. And it's fascinating to watch someone have these 2 skills. But I think the point I'm getting to is that you are right, Steve, in that the interviewers are often just as nervous as the interviewee, because they need to get it right. They want to bring the right person into their business. They've usually potentially got to report upwards to maybe a senior, the senior leadership team about, well, this is the person we believe is going to fit into that role really well. And they're banking their reputation on it, if you like.
Yeah. So there's actually can be quite a lot of pressure on somebody interviewing. I mean, especially interviewing young people as well, because young people are obviously an investment into, that person's future, but also, the future of the business too. So you want to make sure you're getting the right person. And as I say, that there's a lot of pressure on somebody to pick the right candidate for that role,
because you're picking potential, aren't you? And that's a really important point, because Kay is. It's a given that these guys are qualified. I mean, they can't even apply for the role unless they have certain 6 years experience. They need to have been qualified for at least 10 years, I believe. So that you don't even get through the door. So that there's no, they don't even have to look at the CV to a degree, other than, where they just double check where they've worked. It's all about cultural fit and skill fit. Whereas with young people, it's about potential fit. And I think that's the difference, because you don't have any experience.
Exactly. That. I mean, you obviously you have your exam results and such, but they can only tell you so much about a person. And I personally believe that sort of real world experience is more valuable than a piece of paper saying that you've achieved such and such grade anyway. But when you've not got that real world experience yet, The thing that's most important is a person's ability to fit in with the team and their willingness to learn new skills. To be a almost like a sort of a blank page for others to help them fill it, essentially. It's like I said earlier, ultimately any practical skills that we would need somebody to have, editing techniques, how to operate a camera, that sort of thing, that can all be taught on the job. But what can't be taught is, as I say, that personality aspect, how well somebody is going to fit into the team, what their personal work ethic is like, and sort of what their interests and their passions are. And those are the things that are most important for us when we're interviewing somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much for giving up your time this morning.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
To come onto our podcast and share your wonderful insights with the young people listening. That's really fascinating. And Helen's always very happy when she gets a new interview question. So
yes, I love it. Yeah,
you're welcome.
Thank you.
So you may or may not be recruiting at the moment, but if anyone's interested in a career in film and video production, what's a way to reach out to Take One TV and maybe just throw their CV into the hat just in case you're hiring at any point? Yeah,
so the thing to do would be to go to our website, which is www.takeonetv.com. That's TAKEONETV.com. Have a look at what we're about, and then send us. We've got a contact form on the website, and just send us a note through there, and we'll have a look and be in touch.
Great name for a company that doing what you do. Yeah, Take One. Yeah, Take One TV. Fantastic.
Better than Take 10. Yeah.
Well, there we go. we aim to do it in one take. Not always possible, but we do our best.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you,
All right. Thanks very much.
Cheers.